Great. Thank you, Lasse, for your time, for being here. And
My pleasure.
it's been a long time now, 4 years and a half that last time we met.
Yeah, too long.
Yeah, too long. And even this year made it actually even longer. This year in particular, even if we are in the pause, but we feel it's really long that we are disconnected and also connected on
Right.
online. And I would like Lasse to start. You, Lasse, now as one of the co-founders of Oxford Leadership, a well-known organization in Europe and in the world, delivering leadership from a consciousness, raising and bringing consciousness to the organization.
Yeah.
Let me ask you, what is your journey that made you who you are today?
Right. So, well, I'm born in Sweden, and came from a family that was very, I would say, middle class family. Traveled around, moved around a lot in Sweden due to my father's work. He was in the steel industry. I think that have shaped me quite a lot, actually, this kind of moving to a new school, finding new friends, and then breaking up. I think that actually had a huge impact in my life, more than I thought before. So I've been studying the National Defense School. I have 2 kids now, adult kids, and a wife, based in Stockholm. So normally when people say, well, what do you do? What have you done? I normally say I'm an entrepreneur. I started 6 companies, always been led by my heart. Passion has always been important for me. So when I feel that I get highly engaged, and also with people, I think I've been almost like, oh, I like this person. And then I try to engage with that. And that always led me to some kind of new adventure, or we started a company together and so forth. And then I would say it's well, it's more than 20 years ago, I met the founder of Oxford Leadership, Brian Bacon. That was a moment, I think, that when I listened to a person that deeply resonated with my heart. Sometimes you walk around and you have a lot of emotions and feelings and mixed thoughts, but you haven't really put it together. And then I listened to Brian, and I was, he is articulating actually what I'm feeling. So 2005, I decided to join Oxford Leadership full time, and now I'm running that together with Cyril Legrand, my French partner, and we are a company today with 215 fellows in 28 countries. Mainly work with big multinational, and basically what we have been, well, the purposes of our organization is transforming leaders for good. So we have always had this kind of belief that we want to address top leaders in a big organization that has a huge impact on this planet, and see if they can be more purpose driven. So basically that has been our calling now for 30 years.
Yeah, that's fascinating. So what was the thing that you've heard from Brian that resonated with you 20 years ago?
I think mainly it was a very simple, very deep, simple messages around purpose, values. I heard about purpose before, but I couldn't really, how do you, that's a very gooey, fluffy thing. What is that? And how do you make that concrete? And he made it very, very concrete. So I think around how he articulated how you create a more inner focus, the inside out perspective, I would say, from that we also preach in terms of leadership. How do you lead from within and not from models or ideas that come from outside, so that you are grounded in something that is your core, and that would be your purpose, your values, and then how do you translate that into a vision, what you want to see in your life.
Yeah, speaking of leading from within, then what is your view of the world today specifically?
So I think we are in a crossroad right now. So I'm very, very positive, and I'm very, very negative. So I'm holding these two tensions inside of me. It's almost like this paradox, which is the world is full of paradoxes right now. So I think we see, especially when I work with big organizations today, I see the new leaders that are emerging, that's going to take the top positions in the future. It's amazing what you see in terms of consciousness, sustainability, more purpose-driven, meaning becomes important, life-work balance. So it's not the conversation around, oh, I need to do a career is almost gone. It's much more around meaning. So when I look at the world today, I think we are in a crossroad. We see on the other hand, especially on the political arena, I would say, in terms of leaders, it's almost like we're going backwards in terms of consciousness. And I think Eckhart Tolle says it very well. He says, consciousness journey is not a straight line up. It goes in circles like this. So if you look at the Roman Empire, 1,000 years later, they could hardly build a house. So the feeling is like we're going backwards right now. And the question is, how far backwards are we going? Because on the other hand, you see a lot of young people now demonstrating, you see a lot of consciousness movements going, Black Lives Matters, Friday for Future, Me Too. So all these movements is emerging, and that will change the consciousness for sure. So
is it for a positive? Is this movement that, let's say, I'm not talking about specific movement that we mentioned, Black Lives Matter or anything else, but any movement, if we say, or any changes, if it's contain violence or negativity or whatever, is it in our benefit?
Most of these movements doesn't start in violence. It's when the old system fights back also many times. So it's like you are familiar with our S-curves when we talk about the old paradigm and the new paradigm, and it's actually a merge between the old paradigm and the new paradigm. The old wisdom, the old, some of the knowing, some of the old paradigm need to go away, but then you have a new paradigm. And so if you look at the old paradigm has all the power, no ideas, and the new paradigm have all the ideas but no power, and that is a clash. So I think most of this movement doesn't start in violence, and I think that is the most important thing. How violent will this be if we go into a new paradigm or a new world order or whatever you want to call it? Because could we do it peacefully? Is it possible? I don't know. I hope so.
Yeah. So talking about consciousness and corporate or organizations, how are they coming together nowadays?
Well, I think organizations, big corporate, that's where consciousness is actually moving fastest, because they're investing so much money to develop their people. So it doesn't happen in school, it doesn't happen in society. Most of the actually consciousness movement happening in organizations today. I think the shift I've seen, I meet thousands of leaders every year, and I would say that the shift has already started. I think 5-6 years ago, we started to see a shift. When I started, I've been talking about purpose-driven organization and purpose-driven leadership for 20 years. No one asked me, come and develop purpose-driven leaders or purpose-driven organization for the first 17 years. Now everybody talks about it. You can't enter an organization when they not talk about purpose. That's a very positive thing, I would say.
Yeah. And where is this shift coming from?
For me, I see it as an evolution. It's an evolution. It's the quest for meaning. We lost meaning you can see that from Gallup poll, for example, the big global that they do every third year, 300,000 employees, 87% of the people don't feel engagement. They don't feel meaning in their work anymore. That's a very sad number. Yeah. So I think it's naturally arising, we don't see meaning in what we're doing anymore. We need to find something else. And that's, I was talking to one of the largest companies, insurance companies in the world, and the guy who is heading the executive development for the top 400 leaders. He said, when I started 5 years ago, for the first 4 years, everybody came up to me and said, okay, what's my next step and what do I have to do to get there? Now, he said, no one talks about that. Everybody talks, how can I create meaning? How can we be more sustainable? So it's a huge shift in conversation, which basically for me is a sign when you see the current is going in a new direction is when you start hearing new conversations. And that conversation becomes louder and louder over the last 5-6 years that I've been working with organizations.
Yeah. Speaking of conscious leader, then what's different they are from the, let's say, regular or normal CEO? What's the impact they can create on the bottom line if we are talking about growing organization?
Well, I think that's a good question, because a lot of people are talking about, what's on the bottom line if we have more purpose-driven leaders or more conscious leaders. Yeah. And now it's quite researched also. Before it was this kind of, it's some kind of soft thing, and maybe people are asking because they read the research today. So Rice Sodia for Conscious Capitalism, for example, he did the same research that Good to Great, what Jim Collins did. He followed on stock market 15 years, how well they developed. And he looked at 3 categories: index, good to great companies, and purpose-driven organizations. So more conscious organizations. And index was about 100%, good to great companies were 312%, and purpose-driven organization had over 15 years, over 1100%. So outperform index with over 10 times. So I think it's if we talk about financials, this is key. But it's also key in terms of how do we become an attractive workplace? How do we become an attractive a magnet for talent? And of course it needs to be real. It can't be a corporate frisbee that we communicate, this is the purpose of our organization, these are the values. We need to see it in the leadership, and when we see it in the leadership, then you will you create the culture that people want to belong to. Yeah. So now if I shift gear to your personal philosophy, or personal purpose. Yes. So I talked about being heart-led. I think that's been when I'm looking at my lifeline, I can see that what have pushed me in a direction has always been something that I had a passion for, something that has been waking my curiosity and makes me come alive. I've never been strategic in terms of my career. I need to do this. If I do this, I'm going to get that. That has never been in my life motto. And I think if I'm bottom line it would be spirit of service. So that I can connect to something that I feel that I'm contributing with something, that I'm supporting with something. And when I'm supporting that with that, whatever it is, I feel good, but it's also good for others. So when I'm listening to that inner voice and trusting my instinct or my intuition, it always goes right. And when I'm not, it always goes wrong if I'm looking at my life.
This is fascinating. How simple and deep it is. How we are complicating our life with worrying and thinking and strategizing and trying to control the output. Where
exactly.
And where the secret is in the journey.
Yeah, exactly. So for me, I think it's, I can, if I would really simplify it, I would say the two basic emotions, love and fear.
Mm.
So am I operating out of love or am I operating out of fear? When I meet leaders, a lot of leaders operating out of fear, not being good enough, fear of losing their jobs, or not being liked, being rejected, these basic human fears that we have. And it's a strong driver for a lot of people, and it's been serving a lot of people. It's been serving me too. We are all fear-based sometimes, but when I'm leaning into operating out of love and making decisions out of that, it becomes a much better outcome. And I think now I'm soon 60, so maybe it's the life journey also.
Yeah, it takes like conscious choice to operate from love rather than fear.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So
scary.
So for your journey now, the 20 years, let's say, journey in particular, what are, let's say, story or event that kind of a turning point for you?
Well, one of the turning points for me was when I started my first company in 1990. That was absolutely a turning point. It pushed me in a new direction.
Mm-hmm.
Another turning point was, of course, when I met my wife. Absolutely a turning point in my life. It's a very simple thing. You might heard that story also. It's actually when maybe it's not that profound, but it was a profound impact in my life. It was when my father was old and he went out for a walk with my mother, and he fell down and he hurt himself very badly. And we found him in the middle of the street, and blood was coming out of his head. And I leaned over to him and said, "Father, how are you doing?" And he looked up at me and said, "I'm doing fine." He was not fine at all. And then I realized that this has an ending. He was very old. This has an ending. And for me to shift the relationship with my father from a father-son relationship to an adult relationship. And we made that shift. So we had a few years together. That was amazing. I started asking those questions that I'd never dared to ask him, and so forth. I think that became a turning point for me in many dimensions, in relationships to people I meet, relationship to my own kids, of course. I have this learning journeys with my kids when I ask them, that they are adults now. So I ask them, so what should we do? What can we do that we learn something together, something new? And then we do this learning journey. So I take my son and I take my daughter. We had a few of these, and that's actually the outcome of that experience with my father.
Yeah, this is profound. When we find the right question to ask, it opens so many different dimension and direction, either internally as an inner self or even towards our relationship with people around us.
Yes.
So now, going forward to the future, how do you see the world in terms of organization, or even as a society after COVID? How are we going to connect after we disconnect?
Yeah, so the conversation has been, will it be a V shape or a U shape? I think we will see a U shape. I don't think we will see a fast recovery from this. So I think we will have some turbulence. At the same time, I think it's also this opportunity to create something new, to reinvent ourselves. So it's a great opportunity. So what I think we will see, and I have been talking to a couple of CEOs, and they say we will cut down our workplace. For example, people will work more from home. That creates, of course, a huge problem for some countries, that they don't have much space at home. Maybe it's only 2 rooms or 1 room, and they have their home family. So they really need to go to the office space. And then you can see in Sweden, for example, people have a lot of space. So one CEO for a huge company, I wouldn't mention the name, but they say we will cut down our office space with 50%.
Wow.
So that is absolutely a change that you will see in the working place, how we work virtually. That's going to continue, and I think it's out of good, actually. We don't need to travel so much. I see these top executives that traveling from one country to another. They go to Asia, and then the next week they go to US, and I think that will stop. We will do that, but it will stop. So in the long run, I think we will, if I'm envision something, I think we will see what we don't see today. We see pockets of it, these kind of consciousness movements. It's a little bit sad that it's only young, or mostly young people that are coming and pushing this consciousness. But hopefully we will see something emerging now that it's still in the undercurrent. We don't really see it, but we will see a new kind of leadership stepping into politics. Absolutely, we see in corporate already, very mindful, very conscious leaders in big organizations. You see this new young CEOs that are 40 years old. They are like Vas, for example, in Novartis is a good example of that. It comes in with a very different mindset, not just numbers and figures. Talk much more about impact of society. How can we help? What can we do? So in the long run, I think we will see a new kind of leadership, a much more conscious leadership, and we will move away from greed and ego.
Yeah,
that's a wish.
Yes, this is a wish, and we are hopeful this wish will come true, because we've seen it in many examples.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So as a first step for normal individual to go through and starting the path of discovering self, what do they need to do?
So we always start with a lifelining exercise. That's the start. That normally when you do that, you can do it by yourself, but I think together with a few people, it's a very good start to map out your life and look at the highs and lows. What is it that have shaped you to the person that you are today? And then share that with someone. Tell your story and spend time with that. You can do that 50 times, you can do it 100 times, you will find new depth inside of you. So I think that's a good start. Start discovering your purpose, being curious, speaking with people that think differently. You see this polarizing that we see in the world today, we and them, it's building up. That's a very dangerous thing. I think we all should engage in I'm talking to you, you're an Arab, what's your perspective on this? Find new perspectives. That's a very good thing that we need to do more of. And you will be more conscious also. And then, of course, I think what I really like, what kind of listening you have when you meet people. So do you have listening to win when you actually try to find a better argument than the other person? Or are you listening to fix when you're thinking about the solution? Or are you actually listening to learn? or listening to understand. So if you can be more in the listening to learn category, I think it will be very helpful also.
Yes, yeah, indeed. And speaking to that, one of the great, let's say, experience that I've witnessed and see, like connecting with different people, different perspective, different culture, different background, it widening the perspective, widening your consciousness, widening your point of view, and holding that with non-judgmental, let's say, view. That is create wide, great point of view and deeper connection with others. Yeah.
Well, you are a master of that, Marwan.
Oh, thank you. Thank you.
No, really, how do you, but I think just becoming that, in that kind of state, you need to be able to listen in a different way also. So that, how do you cultivate your curiosity?
Yeah. Yes.
So building on that, maybe I just note what I think we will see in organization in terms of leadership development. We will see vertical development going from horizontal, which is most of the leadership development that you see on the planet today is horizontal. So it's tools, building capabilities, nothing wrong with that. Here's a tool for holding a different conversation. Here is a tool for coaching, but what we will see is vertical development. So it's adult development and it's consciousness movement, mindset transformation, basically. So we will see much more of that. I think that will be the next tier of leadership development.
Yeah, and yes, and there are now. You're right. I'm seeing this is coming more and more literature around it, more research, more practice, which is an essential and important. So now we are heading toward let's say the end of our conversation, and I want to close it with a question: that if you meet someone, strange person on the street, and you have to give him an advice for life, what would you tell him?
Be true to yourself. I think that's the scariest thing, but it's also the most important thing. Be authentic, be true to yourself. And of course, what is that? That is a lifelong journey to discover that. But this is what I have experienced myself, and this is what I have seen in others. It's not an easy road to walk, being true to yourself. But in the end game, whatever, if you live until you're 100 years old or whatever old, you're going to be more fulfilled. That's for sure.
Great. Thank you very much, Lasse, for the time and for the wisdom that you shared with us.
Thank you, Marwan.